Welcome to the Best Known Church Show, where we show you how to 10x your reach with church marketing that will help you increase your impact, make more disciples, and become the cornerstone of your community again. This is for the leaders with an outrageous vision, because anything less would be an inaccurate reflection of our Creator. The ones who have unreasonable faith, because you know God works unreasonable miracles. And the ones who are relentless in the pursuit of your calling, because anything less would not make a good and faithful servant. If that's you, you're in the right place. Now, please welcome your host and guide on this journey to become the best known organization in your community, Justin Nava.
Welcome to the Best Known Church Show. My name is Justin, and I'm not going to touch my camera. I'm still setting up my studio. If you're watching the video here on YouTube or Spotify, welcome. Hopefully the audio is still good. Doing some renovations to my studio. I'm glad that you're here because today we're going to be talking about capturing people's attention and focusing on what makes you unique. Because here's the deal, Pastor. If you ever felt like your church is just the best kept secret, that people don't know about your church, what's worse than that is when you feel like people know about your church, but they just don't care about your church. I think that's worse, to be honest. So today I'm going to share with you how your church messaging might actually be the problem. It's not the website software. It's not your SEO strategy. It's not even your logo. It's the message. It's how you communicate who you are and how you showcase how you're relevant to your community. Because you and I both know that the church is relevant to the community. It is relevant to where people are in their lives, no matter where they've been, where they've come from, what they've done, where they are, where they think they're going, right? But you have to explain that in ways that they will understand. And in what way that another church communicates to a group of people may not be the way that your church could communicate to a group of people. And if you're a planted church, if you're recently planted or you planted just this year in 2023 or planted recently, most likely the reason you're planted is because there is an unserved group of people where you planted your church. And I love that the church planting process can go one of two ways. Either number one, you do the demographic research and you find the best place to plant a church for whatever reason demographically, and you go and plant a church there. I also love when you do the opposite of convenient approaches, and I love talking to these pastors because they're just some of the most outrageous pastors you can talk to, is they look at the data and it says you should not plant a church here. There's not enough income. There's not enough growth. This is a dying area. You should not plant a church here. And the pastor says, that's where we're going to plant. We're going to go after the forgotten people. We're going to go after the people the world is leaving behind. We're going to go after the neighborhoods, the communities, the hood that businesses won't even go in to make a buck. That's how underserved these people, the food deserts, the undereducated, underfunded. That's where we're going to go. I love those churches. Now, either way, no matter how you plant your church, there's no right or wrong answer. The only wrong answer is, are you going to plant a church and just do what another church is doing? Or are you going to plant a church to reach that unique group of people in the unique way that God's called you, in the unique way that He's equipped you, in the unique way that they need to be served and communicated to? Or are you just going to do what's already been done? And if you want to do what's already been done, why are you doing it in the first place? Let me tell you about a test I do, and it's in the thumbnail if you're watching this. I call it the grocery store test. Just yesterday, might have been 2 days ago. This week's blown by. I can't believe it's already Thursday at the time I'm recording this. But let's just say this week, I was talking with a pastor doing a 360 church marketing consultation. That's where we go through your current marketing strategy, your messaging, your logo, your website, your Google presence, your advertising, your Google grant, your public relations. We go through everything of your outreach, messaging, and marketing with a fine-tooth comb. And I asked him, I said, Pastor, let's pretend you and I are in a grocery store. We're in the checkout aisle. I turn to you behind me and I say, hey, you're the pastor of that church. Tell me a little bit about your church. And he starts telling me about, well, I'm pastor of this church. And actually it was a different church 6 years ago, and then I came on. We went under a name change. Right at that moment, I said, "I'm sorry, Pastor. The checkout lady's ready to take my money. Have a good day." Turn around. It's about 20 seconds. And what we both realized, I mean, of course, I already kind of know this is going to happen based on the people I'm talking to. The kind of people that request these audits usually don't have a quick pitch for their church. And he realized that even though he knows who his church is, because he was going to get there eventually, he didn't have a way to capture my attention and compel or persuade me why I should care about his church. And I'm going to give you some examples of what that could look like based on what your church is now versus what it could be. But first, let me go into specifically why we need a quote unquote quick pitch. Okay. And that's really what today's episode is about. You know, so you might hear called a quick pitch, a 30-second pitch, an elevator pitch. We're not selling your church. We're not selling Jesus. We are persuading people, right? Paul said it's up to us to persuade people. And so we need to persuade people that our church is the one worth paying attention to. Our church is the one to visit. Our church is the one to connect with. Our church is the one to plug into. Our church is the one to trust. Because if we don't do it, number one, they're going to seek another worldly solution to a spiritual problem. Number two, they're going to go to a different church that's not equipped to serve them. And it's either because they're the closer church or that church is using improper message. So they're going to go and get burned by that church through no fault of anyone. Or number three, they're going to go to a church that I call a wolf in sheep's clothing. It's the one that they're teaching a false message. They're going to hurt, abuse, and use this person. And it's all because your church did not, or you did not take the proper time to craft an effective message that's communicating the right message to the right people in the right way. So let's start with getting your church noticed. Okay. Now, yes, you need to have an elevator pitch, but you also have to know how to craft it uniquely. So you're showcasing the uniqueness of your church, why you exist, how you serve people, what can they expect when they visit, and what can they expect in their life if they plug into you, what kind of transformation can they expect? We call this in marketing positioning. Okay, I don't like to use a lot of marketing terms, even though ironically we call ourselves Nava Church Marketing. I don't like to use a lot of marketing terms to describe what we're doing because it really, marketing terms are invented in the secular world. And I don't like translating them one-to-one into the church world. But this one I think is a accurate term for positioning. Positioning really is showing where your organization stands in the community of organizations, meaning your church is one church of 330,000 and more, not just count. I mean, let's count outside of America. There's probably over 1 million if you count all the house churches in the Middle East and Asia and all that. So your church is one of 1 million. In your community, your church is one of a dozen. Even in a small town, and I'm talking a town of less than 1,000 people, your church is one of 4. Right? I'm in Texas, the land of small towns. And I talked to a man, Tommy, rabid follower. Love you, Tommy, if you're watching this. He used to think, but when he was lost in his small town, he used to think, what are all these churches fighting about? I mean, we're a small town. You got 4 churches in one town. And he used to think, what is everyone fighting about? But once you come to our side of the door, and after he receives Christ and becomes a follower and believer, he realizes, well, each of these churches is reaching a different group of people. Based on beliefs, based on demographic, based on who the pastor is, based on who the flock or what the flock is equipped for. So knowing how to position your church means what makes your church different from the other churches in your area. Not only that, if I've already, me as a community neighbor, if I've already blown off every other church in the area, either because I'm an atheist, I'm agnostic, I've been burned by too many churches, I have friends that have been burned by too many churches, the TikTok algorithm has served me way too many videos of church hurt, church abuse, and what's the anti-evangelism deconstruction. There you go. Deconstruction videos about people who just left the church entirely or are trying to figure out their own faith. I've just seen way too much anti-church stuff in the news. I don't care about any church. The question is, why should I care about your church? That's the question. So how do you position your church? Not only that, how do you position it within the community of your other churches? Okay. Well, another word we don't use in ministry is competition. You're not in competition with other churches. You may be in competition with worldly solutions. You may be in competition with the wolves in sheep's clothing. I think that comes naturally if you're a Bible-believing church. You look at another church that's preaching against the Bible, you're supposed to call them out. Right? So there may be some competition here, but in my experience, talking to churches all over the country, America, that is, we service the U.S. That's what we're gifted to do. So, right now we're serving U.S. churches. So that's where all my data comes from, experientially wise. We talk to churches in the same town. And they all have the same heart. And not only that, they have nothing bad to say about the other pastors in town, unless they're a wolf in sheep's clothing, unless they're being users of their congregation or not following the shepherd rule they're supposed to. But most of the time, pastors have nothing but good things to say about each other. So you're not in competition with other churches. The question is, when you position your church, you're not saying you're better than other churches. You're saying you're better equipped to reach a certain kind of person. What kind of person is that? On the most basic level, it's your language. You don't even have to be in a metroplex town to know that your Spanish speakers need a Spanish-speaking church. Your Korean language speakers need a Korean language church. Your Russian speakers need a Russian church. Your English speakers need an English church, right? In Canada even, right? You've got French-speaking churches and English-speaking churches, and a lot of English churches do not bivocational, bilingual, right? There's nothing wrong with that. So the question is, on the most basic level, you are already turning away a group of people just by having an English-speaking church. Because if you're supposed to be everything to everyone all at once, then when is your Korean service? Why haven't you hired a sign language interpreter for your services? Because you're not equipped. And that's okay. You really have to ask yourself, what makes us unique? What makes our church our church? Because everyone, and you have to be able to explain this to someone, because everyone thinks they know what a church is. If you ask 100 people, let's play Family Feud, and you ask 100 people, what is a church? You're going to get 117 different answers. And they will assume what a church is based on their preconceived notion, their past experiences, and what they see other people telling them what a church is. And chances are, when you survey those 100 people and get 117 answers, you're not going to get a one-size-fits-all description of your church. Because your church may not have a college ministry. Your church may not have a kids ministry. Your church may not be catering or serving to senior adults. Your church may not have a food pantry, right? Someone's definition is going to be, a church is someone that provides community support, food pantries, suit closets, benevolence ministries, whatever. And your church may have none of that. So by their definition, you're not even a church. You have a unique position in your community to uniquely serve a unique group of people with your unique gifts. Therefore, you need a unique message that showcases why you exist. People don't need to know what your church is. They need to know why your church is. Play that, was the Guardians of the Galaxy 2? No, it wasn't. It was Avengers, Infinity War. They were like, where's Gamora? And the other guy was like, who is Gamora? And Drax was like, why is Gamora? That's the game we got to play, right? No one goes to your church because of where you are. They barely go because of who you are. You're a church. They're going to go to church somewhere. They picked yours for this case. To really communicate who you are, you have to communicate why you are. Meaning, why your church? Why do you exist? Why do you do what you do? You'll notice that if you talk to the people that really love their church and you ask them, why do you love their church? They're going to give you a very specific answer. It's very rarely, it's great preaching and friendly people. It's usually going to be Pastor so-and-so, Pastor John is a great preacher, is really practical, and I've made a lot of friends. Rosa, Miguel, Jose. I don't know why I'm going into a Mexican church. It's like I'm going back to my grandma's church, right? So that'll tell you that church is uniquely reaching this person because they didn't say great preaching. They said Pastor John is a great preacher. And they didn't say friendly people. They named those people. That is where your uniqueness comes from. And that is what's going to start to get your church noticed. Figuring out who you are, why you are, and starting there to build your communication. Now, how do you build that communication? How do you know what to say? How do you know what to prioritize, right? Because your church has a million messages, right? Even if you know exactly who you are and why you exist and the kind of person you want to serve, you've still got lots of messages. You want them to come to Sunday service. You want them to plug into a Bible study or a small group. You want them to plug in and become a volunteer and to serve. You want them to give. You want them to be on the Great Commission. You want them to learn how to make disciples who make disciples. If you give that entire menu to someone, you're going to overwhelm them, and they will end up choosing to do what they've always done, which is probably nothing spiritually. So we not only have to know what we want to tell people, we not only want to know why we should tell it to them, we want to know in what order to tell it to them, and what words to use. I was actually looking for this book this morning. I'm going to recommend you a book, something I don't normally do. I really believe that you need to have someone do your marketing for you, Pastor. But the messaging is usually step number one. In fact, this morning I had a clarity call and I recommended this as step number one. And I said, Pastor, we have certified guides here on our team that we rely on. We've even got StoryBrand guides that aren't certified. I don't know if I can call them guides, but they're working their way up to that. And, one of the things that, I believe in using professionally trained people to get the job done and helping equip people become professionally trained, right? Put baptism by fire. But the StoryBrand framework that I'm going to recommend to you here is something that you can get started on your own. And while you probably can't do as good of a job as a certified person, just like I can't do as good of a job as a licensed plumber, I can, however, fix a toilet handle or something like that. So you can do some basic work here with the StoryBrand framework and at least get started to get to the point where you can then grow your church to hire on either part-time, full-time, or outsource to an agency like us. Anyways, so I was looking for my book and I realized I gave it to someone. So I don't have a book to show you. But the book I'm going to recommend to you is the StoryBrand book. Actually, let me see if I can share my screen, if I can pull it up here on my screen. And I will show it for the people. Yeah, Building a StoryBrand. That is the book. It's $15. I told you earlier it was $18. I think I said it. Maybe I told my marketing client, my consultation client, that it was $18. Let me pull it up on screen for the people watching. Building a StoryBrand by Donald Miller. Clarify your message so customers will listen. This works for churches, okay? This is not one of those resources where we have to say, well, we don't say this, we say this. Pretty much everything in this book exactly translates to churches. It's why the StoryBrand framework is so recognized and used in the church community and by agencies like mine. So go pick up the StoryBrand framework. I'll have a link down below, so you know exactly the book to buy. There's quite a few. In fact, there's a new book that came out from Donald Miller for specifically small businesses. But what StoryBrand is, and I'm going to butcher this because I'm not StoryBrand certified, but I should be, or at least the agency should be. It provides you a framework of knowing who you're talking to, what's important to them, how you communicate to that importance so they can see the value in your ministry, why you're qualified to speak to them, meaning your authority and empathy, what steps you want them to take, what happens if they don't connect with you, and what happens if they do connect with you. Once you figure this whole framework, then you're basically equipped to the best of your ability, which is going to be pretty good if you follow what this book says. You're going to be equipped to know how you need to communicate to the people you're called to reach. And so inside this video or inside this podcast, however you're listening to this, I'm going to walk you through the StoryBrand framework. And now the way they position it is in the method of a story. Okay. I don't know if I can use that image. Let me see if I can find a new image. Here we go. We'll use the StoryBrand image. So I'm going to share my screen again so you can see what I'm trying to show you here. And of course we got to pop up here. Here we go. So the StoryBrand method is going to start with a character, and that character is your potential guest. Okay. Now we call them potential guests. You might call them neighbors, your community members. We like to look at them as potential guests. Rick Warren calls it your crowd or your community. Okay. And they have a problem, right? There is something going on in their life. And that problem is not, I wish someone would make me a disciple who makes disciples. They have real problems now that have spiritual answers. And they're going to meet a guide, which is your church. You're going to lay out a plan for them and call them to take an action that will result in success if they join you or follow your plan, or failure if they ignore you and continue what they've always done. Now, you're not going to present your message like this on a one-to-one, like you're going to meet someone and say, hey, you're a potential guest. I know your problem is this. Now, let me introduce you to this plan. And by the way, if you don't follow this plan, you're going to die and go to hell. You don't follow it that way to a T, but that gives you the framework of how you're going to position your messaging going forward. Okay. So that's a really quick, dumb run through of what the StoryBrand method is. And again, the few folks that work with us, we actually use StoryBrand guides. The goal of all this, number one, is to get your one-liner, which is essentially your elevator pitch. And this is the secret to effective church messaging, because everything you do is basically going to come back to this one-liner. It is your elevator pitch. For example, our church, my own church, Crosswaves Church, we used to say something like, I deleted it from my notes. Let me go to the website. We used to say something like, hey, we're a 21st century approach to a first century church. What does that mean? And that was so confusing to people. First of all, 21st century approach. Okay, technology, I guess. First century church. What does that mean? Even Christians were like, what does that mean? Like, I don't know. People thought we were an online church. People thought that we were a cult. It was very confusing. So we went through StoryBrand, used the same guide that we use on staff here, and came up with, hey, we're a church that meets in the home, and we give you knowledge, resources, and structure to share your faith with family and friends inside your own home. How much more clear is that? So if someone says, oh yeah, Crosswaves, I heard about that. Tell me more about that. Hey, well, basically we're a church that meets in a home, and we want to give you the knowledge and resources and equip you to share your faith in Jesus with friends and family at your home. Oh, tell me more about that. Hey, absolutely. Did you ever feel like church should be more than a building? And then you just kind of go through the messaging. So that's essentially, I'll share with you more examples later, but that's kind of what the one-liner you want to get to. Okay. And that's hardly even a one-liner. Let me pull up our one-liner here. That's a great one-liner, by the way, but, hey, we know all Christians are called to disciple others for Christ, but most of us don't know where to start. At Crosswaves, we give you access to biblical knowledge, structure, and resources to share your faith with your family and friends inside your own home. So that's what I'm going to say if someone asks me, tell me about your church. That is so much better than, hey, we're a 21st century church trying to carry out a first century church style of communicating. And you can come to my house and we can have dinner and, okay, checkout time, bye. Like, what did I do? I just invited this guy over to a date? I don't know. Like, that's weird. Okay. But you start with that problem, you work that out, figure out how your church is the guide and what kind of transformation or what's the end result. And the problem is you don't know how to be a disciple. The church is going to guide you by giving you the resources and the structure so you can share your faith, so your friends and family can join the kingdom and hear the good news. So that's the one-liner that you want to get. That's the number one thing that StoryBrand's going to give you. The number two thing is you have everything you need to build the rest of your marketing from. You're going to use your StoryBrand messaging to influence how you build your logo and your identity assets. You're going to use that to influence what your website looks like. In fact, even in that StoryBrand book, it's going to teach you how to take your messaging and at least make a homepage out of it. Your SEO is going to be optimized based on that messaging. Your advertising, your messaging on your advertisements is basically going to be your StoryBrand. What's going to come out of that StoryBrand framework. So this is a game changer for churches, the StoryBrand framework. And it's amazing how many churches just don't know it exists because they are business focused. However, even on the StoryBrand podcast, even on a lot of the StoryBrand website, and there are plenty of church focused StoryBrand guides that help churches clarify their message so they can effectively communicate to more people. So that is the game changer for churches. That is the secret sauce. And yeah, you can pay a certified story brand guide $3,000 and have them go through it with you. But if you're not at that point and you want to dig in and do the work yourself, get the story brand book, start from there. It's better to at least have a dull knife than no knife at all. Some people would argue at that point, but hey, you can at least sharpen that knife. So that's what it is. And I've tried lots of different copywriting frameworks to figure out messaging. StoryBrand is absolutely the best one for churches. Now let's make this a reality, right? I know we got to talk about, why this is important and why you need to care. And then we got to talk about, the best way to do it. Hey, we've done that. Now let's talk about implementation. Let's talk about putting it into action. Okay. There's three main ways that you're going to put your messaging into action. Three main ways. These are not the only ways. I'm only going to highlight three. Because again, if you follow our roadmap, you're going to use your messaging in your branding. You're going to use your messaging in your website. You're going to use it in your SEO. You're going to use it in your advertisements. You're going to use it on social media. You're going to use it in all your publications. You're going to use it as part of your outreach strategy. You're going to use it for everything. I'm just going to highlight three of what I think are the priorities here, especially as you and I are talking in a marketing sense. Okay. So number one, when you're putting this framework to work, you're making it a reality. You're putting it into action and implementing it. Just to get to the point, you're going to start usually with your website. Okay, and the part of the messaging framework that you're going to put in you're going to use for your website is your pain points and your user journey or your guest journey. Meaning, what do I want people to do? Well, usually, if they're on your website, it's going to be check us out, visit us in person, fill out a Connect card, or plan a visit, or what. And if they're not ready to do that, watch a sermon video, or look at our kids' information, or download this resource. Whatever that is, you're going to redo everything in your website, usually after going through StoryBrand. That one-liner, you're going to manipulate it to become your headline. And I've got some examples I'll share with you towards the end here. Your brand script is usually going to be on your homepage in some way, which is kind of like your extended one-liner, or it is your one-liner. Your testimonies are going to be on your homepage that you're going to know where to put and insert based on the StoryBrand framework in that book. Again, link down below. Your guest path, right? If you know that you want someone to watch a message before they come to church, you're going to give them a big button to click. Watch this message. If you want them to plan a visit and go see what to expect and fill out a form, you're going to put a big button, plan your visit, and you're going to plaster it all over your homepage. So people know what you want them to do. They are clear that, hey, this isn't a menu, okay? If you want, you can go find everything we have. But right now, I want you to do one thing. Plan a visit. Watch this message. Download this resource. Whatever it is. That's how you're going to implement this into your website. And then as you write the rest of your website pages, your plan a visit, your ministry page, your about page, your leader page, your contact page, all of that is going to be written through the framework of who are we reaching, what do they care about, and how can we write content for our website that is effectively going to reach those people. For example, if you say you're a church that is real people with a real purpose, then your leadership page needs to reflect what makes you a real person. Okay? Because real people, in most mind's eye, they don't care about your seminary experience, your preaching experience, how long you've been a deacon in the church, and then how you became a pastor at the church. They don't care about that. What makes a real person are your hobbies, your interests, your experiences. If you're a family-focused church, then talk about your pastor's family on the leadership page, because you know that that's important to your people. So often we look at our bio and we say, oh, there's a tangent. We look at our bio and say, this is what's important to me, therefore you should know about it. I'm going to look at what's important to you, and I'm only going to tell you what's important to you. The second thing you're going to look at is your social media and advertising. And I put those together because social media without advertising is basically a waste. The only exception to that is maybe Reels and TikTok. So if you're going to be doing social media, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and then especially advertising, you're gonna, like online advertising, you're gonna need to know who you're talking to. And not only that, you're gonna need to know what they're looking for. This is the first step, the second step of the story brand framework. Who is the character and what is their problem? You're going to advertise to that problem. One of our churches, their problem is they feel like they have a boot in their neck. They cannot get ahead in life. No matter what they try, whoever's advice they follow, they cannot get ahead. That's the problem. So how can the church assist with that? Job placement, food pantry, helping you make rent. Another area, they're in a heavily churched area, and they're tired of churches putting on these big production, and they're shallow. So what is their advertisements? Getting answers, resources to figure out what God actually wants for you. What does God want for you outside of giving this church $100 a month, or giving that church 10% of your paycheck so they can clean the city's biggest slide, or fund the Easter egg drop from a helicopter? I'm sure there are a lot of people that would love to fund that, but there are also a lot of people that are burned out by that. They want real answers. So that's the advertisement. Ask us anything. There's another area that's extremely unhealthy. They're in a food desert. What do you advertise to them? Well, yeah, you could advertise a food pantry. Maybe you could advertise computer classes so they can become computer literate and get a job and work their way up and out of the community. Okay? So whatever that advertising is, you're speaking to that pain point. And the same thing on social media. If you're reaching families, then on social media, talk about things for the family that help the family. It's okay to not spend time, resources, energy speaking to people. You're not making Korean language posts if you're an English-speaking church. So you don't need to make posts for people you're not equipped to serve. Other churches will handle that. God will plant other churches for them or other ministries. So speak to those pain points. Speak to those people. The last thing that you can use it for, and yeah, this is a lot internal, but it has external implications as well. Implications? External results. And that is your sermons, the curriculum you pick, and the ministries you start. Your message is almost like your mission, meaning anything you do at your church should align with your mission. If your mission is to make disciples who make disciples, and you have a pizza party where you don't tell anyone about Jesus or encourage and equip your students to tell their friends about Jesus, why did you have a pizza party? You could have used that money elsewhere. That's on mission. Not saying there's anything wrong with pizza parties. There's something wrong with pizza parties that don't align or accomplish the mission of the church. Once you know you're the hero of the story, your potential guests, who your members were all potential guests at one point, you know what their problems are. You can do sermons on that problem and use that problem to point people to Jesus. The ministries you plant, right? If the problem is our community is undereducated, let's start a college for these undereducated people. Let's do computer classes for these undereducated. Let's do finance classes for these undereducated. I got clients that those are just 3 examples that popped to the top of my head. Got another community that's well off, a church that's in a well off community. So let's teach finance classes to make sure they're not going to get in trouble with the IRS, but also that we can show them how to use their funds for charity instead of just more selfish ambitions, right? So whatever that looks like, your messaging can help influence and assist. Not influence. Your messaging can help assist accomplish your mission by providing more insight into why your church exists. You know who you're going to serve. You know what they want. You know what their problems are. You know how you can help them. So now you know what sermons to preach, what curriculum to choose for classes, and what ministries you need to plant that will assist in carrying out that mission and assist in spreading that message. This is putting it into reality. Because if you just do the framework, nothing's going to happen. If you just do this, if you go through the story brand book, check. Make your story brand framework, check. Write your story brand homepage, check. But if you don't do anything with it, you just wasted $15. I don't care if that book was free. You wasted the shipping cost. So you will have more clarity on what your church is doing and how you do it and why you do it and how it's going to help someone else. It will also give you clarity and the ability to say no, because that's not who we are. It'd be the same as if someone came to my church, a church that meets in the homes, and said, hey, I want to plan a building. It's not who we are. And if you look at our mission statement, it does sound like who we are, but it's not our message. It would be very confusing. And I think that's the thing that confuses people is when you communicate something that you aren't, they come with false expectations and they're let down, disappointed, and burned again. Listen, all this is part of our definitive church marketing method. I said the messaging here, the messaging portion is the first step. It is the most important step, but you need to know the whole picture. Okay. If you just do your messaging, but you don't implement it, you don't implement it in the right ways, in the right process, in the right system, in the right order, that's the word I was looking for, then you're just shooting yourself in the foot. You're doing more random blasts instead of taking a laser targeted approach. So go to bestknownchecklist.com. Again, that's www.bestknownchecklist.com. Link down below. Download the checklist so you can see everything that you could be doing and just check off. Hey, we're doing this. We're doing this. We're doing this. Okay, we don't need to do that. We're not doing this. So we need to do this is what I meant to say. It's going to be huge for you. Bestknownchecklist.com. Here it is. I found my note here. So yeah, I already shared with you the example of my church. We're a 21st century church taking a first century approach to church. What? No. You want to know about our church? We believe all Christians are called to disciple for Christ, but most of us don't know where to start. Crosswaves Church provides you with the access to biblical knowledge, structure, and resources to confidently share Jesus Christ with your friends and family inside your home. Tell me more. Right? Just like a headline example. This is from a church. Their abbreviation is CTA. They went from welcome to CTA as the main message of their website to we're a real church with real purpose for real people. No matter where you came from or where you are now, we want to pursue God together with you. Come check us out. That's just like a website headline. Okay? We had another church go from welcome to our website. It literally said that when we took it over. Welcome to our website. To now discover what's missing in church. Be a part of a community that isn't afraid to ask hard questions and challenge each other to live life the way Jesus has called us to. Automatically, I can see this church and I can say, yeah, I don't want that. I want easy Jesus. Give me someone else. But I think more people are going to say, thank you. Finally, a church that isn't afraid to answer my questions about evolution. Finally, a church that's not afraid to answer my question of, is Easter an offshoot of some pagan festival called Ishtar? Finally, a church that when I come in and ask a question, is it a sin, really a sin to be homosexual? They won't be afraid to give me the right the real answer. And they'll accept me despite what questions I have. I will see this church and say, that's a church for me. And yeah, some people may say, nah, that's weird. No thanks. Next. That's good because you couldn't serve those people anyways. There is another church equipped to reach those people. This is the secret here of getting your church known in your community, more relevant to your community, and a cornerstone of your community. When I say community, I'm not talking about your city, your town, or your geolocation. I'm talking about the people you're equipped to serve. And if you're a church in a town of 3 million people, you are equipped not to serve 3 million people, probably equipped to serve 300,000 of those people. And then, yeah, when you take geolocation into account, maybe 10 to 15,000. And resource-wise, you may only ever get up to 300 because by the time you get to 300, you're going to say, we need to plant another church that can then geolocate differently and reach another 3,000 people. And then they grow and they plant another church. So your community is not 3 million people. Your community is that 3,000. And who of that 3,000? Because, I mean, just numbers say some of them are going to be atheists. Some of them are going to be Muslim. Some of them are going to be never give a church a chance. If you're Calvinist, you expect this, right? But there are the people out there. You've got to go find them. That's your community. For some people, for some churches, it's the black community. For some churches, it's the Baptist community. For some churches, it's the progressive liberal community. For some churches, it's the conservative rural community. For some churches, it's the blue collars. For some, it's the family. For some, it's the singles. For some, it's the divorced community. Your people are out there. That's who you need to position your church to say, we are here for you. You can stop looking because God's going to talk to you through us. We're going to help you find exactly what you're here for. Whatever that message is, you've got a message. And the only wrong way to handle it is to not communicate it at all or to communicate someone else's message. And then you're stuck wondering, what's wrong with my website? Let's spend some more money. When the issue was never that in the first place. It was your message. I just realized I left a little ad down here below. Sorry about that. Wherever you're watching, give this a like, give it a subscribe. God bless you guys. I will see you all again next week.
That's going to do it for today's episode of the Best Known Church Show with Justin Nava. Be sure to subscribe to stay updated on the latest news, strategies, and resources that you need to reach 10x more people and become the best known in your community. To send us a message or leave a voicemail for Justin to be played on a future show, visit thebestknownchurchshow.com. And if you'd like to work with us so you can focus on your ministry, give us a call at 832-861-7654. Until next time, stay outrageous, unreasonable, and relentless.